Sexual violence is one of the most serious and sensitive issues in society, yet it is often discussed in ways that are riddled with misinformation, bias, and outright manipulation. While false accusations are statistically rare, the public perception that victims, especially women, lie all the time remains widespread, especially in the Black community, where historical injustices and modern-day systemic failures fuel deep distrust in the legal system. At the same time, Black men have long been the targets of both legitimate and false accusations of sexual violence, which further complicates conversations about accountability, justice, and due process. It's critical to distinguish between cases that are false, meaning they never happened, versus cases that are unproven, meaning there isn't enough evidence to convict, but that doesn't mean the allegation was a lie. It's also important to point out that there is a difference between credibility and truth. In fact, someone who appears to lack credibility can actually be telling the truth. This is why the court of public opinion is so brutal and often so wrong. The idea that victims, but particularly women, routinely fabricate sexual assault allegations has been a dominant cultural narrative for centuries, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Research shows that false reports make up as little as 2%, meaning the vast majority of survivors are telling the truth. However, high-profile false accusations receive outsized attention, leading many to assume that lying about sexual violence is commonplace. This perception is particularly entrenched in the Black community, where historical and systemic factors complicate how sexual assault allegations are viewed. This dynamic plays directly into public reactions to the lawsuits against Sean Combs and now Jay-Z, Druski, and Odell Beckham Jr. and others. For many Black men, these lawsuits reinforce the belief that women, or their lawyers, fabricate accusations simply for financial gain. There's an ugly history of Black men being falsely accused of sexual violence, going all the way back to lynching-era America. The false accusation of Emmett Till by Carolyn Bryant is just one of many examples. This trauma gets passed down generationally, and as a result, some Black men, some Black people in general, become hyper-defensive, assuming any accusation against a Black man is a false one. The problem is that both realities exist at once. Black men have been falsely accused and unfairly criminalized, and Black men have also committed sexual violence, just like men of other races and backgrounds. Refusing to believe victims just because the accused is Black doesn't undo racism. It reinforces the idea that justice doesn't apply universally. Sexual assault survivors often sue in civil court because the justice system has historically deprioritized sex crimes. Overwhelmingly, criminal accusations of assault are not investigated or aggressively prosecuted, leaving a slim percentage of survivors the ability to seek accountability and restitution through civil court, not unlike cases of wrongful death. And it's true. Lawyers take an oath, and they have rules to follow. But when it comes down to it, the cases they take and how they handle them comes down to the honor system. Lawyers aren't supposed to push bad lawsuits, and they're supposed to follow the rules, even when they think no one is watching. Nowhere is this complexity more evident than in the high-profile civil lawsuits against Sean Diddy Combs and now others, particularly those filed separately by attorneys Tony Busby and Ariel Mitchell. What initially appeared to be a wave of serious allegations has begun to unravel, revealing disturbing patterns of alleged legal manipulation, media exploitation, and bad faith lawyering. This unfolding situation is not just about celebrities. It's about how the legal system is allegedly being weaponized in ways that hurt both actual survivors and those falsely accused. The Diddy lawsuits are raising a new issue. When do civil lawsuits become a weapon for bad faith actors? When are the accusations valid? And when are they a flat-out lie? Lawyers like Tony Buzbee and Ariel Mitchell have been accused of knowing that their cases lack merit, yet proceeding anyway. They've named celebrities who are aggressively fighting back, leading to valid questions about the credibility of the lawsuits as a whole. This creates a new problem. Some cases might actually be true, but they get lost in the noise. And it fuels the myth that women always lie. In several cases, Tony Buzbee and Ariel Mitchell appear to be exploiting legal loopholes in cases that may not actually have any merit. As you've probably noticed by now, Tony Buzbee deploys a media blitz strategy. Buzbee files bare-bones lawsuits with little substance, but leans heavily on the criminal allegations against Diddy, even if they're unrelated to the specific civil lawsuit. Then he goes on a media tour, making statements that are legally and factually unsupported, but which create a public frenzy that reinforces the idea of guilt. This taints potential jurors, forces settlements, and destroys reputations before defendants even have a fair chance to respond. One of many red flags that have been raised is Tony Buzbee isn't even admitted to practice law in the district where he's filing, suggesting he knows these cases won't actually go to trial. And that matters. As for Ariel Mitchell, her strategy seems to be one of delay tactics. Ariel Mitchell files lawsuits but doesn't serve defendants, which means the case doesn't legally move forward, yet it still exists in the public record. When the court finally pushes back on the delays, she amends the lawsuit just enough to restart the service deadline, keeping it in legal limbo. This means famous defendants are stuck defending themselves in the media, not in the courtroom, where they'd actually have a legal mechanism to fight back. Meanwhile, the public assumes guilt because the lawsuit is out there, but no defense is happening on record. This is strategic legal warfare. Weaponize the stigma of sexual assault. Use procedural loopholes to keep cases floating in the public domain. Leverage media narratives to apply maximum pressure. Exploit public ignorance of legal process. Defendants are guilty in the court of public opinion before they've even been served a lawsuit. The legal system becomes a media playground rather than a place for due process. And again, this isn't just about Diddy or Jay-Z or Druski or Odell Beckham Jr. This is part of a larger pattern where high-profile lawyers exploit civil litigation to shake down wealthy defendants without ever having to prove a case in court. Because celebrity cases can attract bad actors, and a bad lawyer doesn't need a strong case, just a famous target. The media will amplify the weak claims if the target is big enough, and the public doesn't understand legal procedure. People don't realize that a lawsuit can be filed without evidence being presented up front, which makes it easy to manipulate public perception. This legal strategy is part of a larger pattern of high-profile civil litigation being used as a weapon rather than a tool for justice. The real-world consequences are serious. When corrupt lawyers exploit sexual assault cases for clout and money, it reinforces the dangerous myth that most accusations are false. This makes it harder for actual survivors to be believed, and it discourages real victims from coming forward. Many people wrongly assume that a civil lawsuit is a weak or fake accusation, when in reality, many survivors pursue civil cases because the criminal system failed them. Lawyers like Buzbee and Mitchell aren't litigating in court, they're litigating in the media. This sets a dangerous precedent that truth matters less than how well you control the story. Because the media taints public perception so quickly, many high-profile defendants can feel compelled to settle, even if the claims against them are false. This encourages more bad faith lawsuits because lawyers know they can leverage public opinion for fast paydays. The lawsuits related to Sean Combs and others appear to have exposed a serious flaw in how the legal system can be manipulated for personal and financial gain. That's a masterclass in weaponizing the legal system for maximum media impact with minimum legal accountability. It's not just slimy. It appears to be a deliberate abuse of legal procedure that turns the courts into a public relations battlefield rather than a place of accountability. And it leaves everyone to wonder, who is telling the truth? Who is lying? And where is justice?